The silver disk descended from the night sky, its smooth surface reflecting the glow of the full moon above. I stood frozen in my backyard, garden hose still running, creating a puddle around my feet. My rational mind tried to process what I was seeing. This wasn't some late-night sci-fi movie marathon. This was real. The spacecraft, roughly the size of a school bus, hovered silently about 50 feet above my prized tomato plants. A soft blue light emanated from beneath the craft, sweeping across the ground in a methodical pattern until it reached me. I should have run. Every movie I'd ever watched screamed at me to flee, but curiosity rooted me to the spot. The light felt warm, almost comforting, as it passed over my body. That's when I heard her voice in my head, clear as a bell, but with an otherworldly musical quality that no human vocal cords could produce. Fascinating. You're the first one I've found who didn't immediately attempt escape. The voice paused, and I could have sworn I detected amusement in its tone. Your species is usually so predictable. A figure materialized at the base of the craft, gracefully descending through the blue beam. As she approached, and I say she because despite her clearly alien nature, there was something undeniably feminine about her appearance. I noticed her skin had a subtle iridescent quality, like mother of pearl catching the light. Her eyes were large and completely silver, without pupils or irises, yet somehow conveyed deep intelligence and curiosity. She walked toward me with the fluid grace of a dancer, her long limbs moving in ways that seemed to defy normal joint constraints. Her head tilted to one side as she studied me, reminding me of my neighbor's inquisitive cat. "I've been observing your species for some time now," she said, her words appearing in my mind without her mouth moving. "You're all so diverse, different shapes, sizes, colors, yet you maintain certain consistent biological patterns." I finally found my voice, though it came out as more of a croak. What are you?" "I am a xenobiologist from what you would call the Andromeda Galaxy. My mission is to study and catalog humanoid species across different star systems." She took another step closer, and I noticed she was wearing something that looked like a cross between a spacesuit and flowing robes, made of a material that seemed to shift colors with her movement. "Your planet has been of particular interest to us." My scientific curiosity began to override my fear. As a biology teacher, I couldn't help but be fascinated by this encounter. Why Earth specifically? "Your species is unique in its rapid evolution and adaptation. But there's something else." She paused, those silver eyes studying me intently. "Something we've observed that doesn't quite fit our understanding of bipedal species development." That's when she asked the question that would change everything. A question that revealed just how little our alien visitors understood about human biology, and one that would lead to the most awkward and hilarious first contact situation in human history. With complete scientific seriousness, she tilted her head and asked, "Human, what is between your legs?" I blinked, feeling heat rise to my face. Of all the questions an advanced alien species might ask during first contact, this was not one I had anticipated. Before I could formulate a response that wouldn't trigger an interstellar incident, she continued, "You see, we've noticed that your species appears to have a binary system of limb configuration, but our long-range scans have been inconclusive about the purpose of this variation." As I stood there, garden hose still dripping in my hand, trying to figure out how to explain human reproductive biology to a curious alien scientist, I realized this might be the strangest teaching opportunity of my career. Little did I know, this conversation would spark a series of events that would not only reshape our understanding of alien life, but also force us to look at ourselves and our anatomy from an entirely new perspective. The alien took my stunned silence as an invitation to elaborate on her research. For instance, she continued, gesturing with a graceful six-fingered hand, "We've observed humans in what you call beaches and swimming pools, wearing different configurations of covering specifically for this anatomical region. Clearly, it holds some crucial cultural or biological significance. But unlike other species we've studied, the purpose isn't immediately apparent from external observation." I finally turned off the garden hose, buying myself a moment to think. How exactly does one explain human reproduction to an alien scientist while standing in one's backyard at midnight? More importantly, how had this become my life? Just as I was contemplating how to begin my impromptu xenobiology lesson, a series of bright lights flooded my backyard. My heart sank as I heard the unmistakable sound of car engines and tires crunching on gravel. The alien's head snapped toward the noise, her silvery eyes widening slightly. "It seems we have company," she observed calmly in my mind. "Your species has a remarkable tendency to gather in groups when confronted with the unknown." I could hear car doors slamming and voices approaching. My neighbors must have spotted the spacecraft hovering above my house, not exactly the most inconspicuous way to conduct first contact. "Listen," I whispered urgently, though I wasn't sure why I was whispering to someone who could read my thoughts. "Maybe we should continue this conversation somewhere less exposed." She tilted her head again, that eerily cat-like gesture that seemed both alien and familiar. "Are you suggesting we relocate to your dwelling? How fascinating. None of my previous subjects have ever invited me inside." Before I could process the implications of previous subjects, she was already gliding toward my back door. I fumbled with my keys, acutely aware of the voices getting closer. As I finally got the door open, I heard someone shout, "Hey, did you see that light? What's going on over there?" I practically pushed the alien through the doorway and slammed the door behind us, my heart pounding. Inside my kitchen, the alien looked wildly out of place. Her iridescent skin cast dancing reflections on my worn cupboards, and her height, which I now realized was well over 6 feet, made my ceiling feel surprisingly low. She seemed fascinated by my refrigerator, moving closer to examine it with an intensity usually reserved for priceless artifacts. "Your food storage unit," she mused. "It emits a consistent humming frequency. Is this some form of communication device?" "It's just keeping my leftovers cold," I replied, peeking through the blinds. A small crowd had gathered at the edge of my property. Phone cameras pointed at the sky where her spacecraft still hovered. "Look, about your question earlier." "Yes, the anatomical inquiry." She brightened, turning away from the refrigerator. "I should explain that my species reproduces through cellular division every 3 cycles of our binary stars. The concept of binary gender is quite foreign to us, which makes your species particularly intriguing." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to figure out how to handle this situation. Outside, I could hear more cars arriving. "Okay, but before we get into Human Biology 101, maybe we should address the growing crowd outside, and your very visible spacecraft." "Oh, that's merely a holographic projection," she waved dismissively. "The actual ship is in orbit. We found that materializing smaller craft helps minimize panic in first contact situations. Though I must say your neighbors seem more curious than frightened." As if to prove her point, someone started knocking on my front door. "Hello? Is everything okay in there?" It was my next door neighbor, a retired physics professor who had probably been waiting his entire life for something like this to happen. The alien's eyes lit up. Literally, they began to glow with a soft silver light. "More humans. Perhaps we could conduct a broader study of your anatomical variations." "Absolutely not," I hissed, then immediately felt ridiculous for treating an advanced alien being like a misbehaving puppy. "I mean, we should probably establish some diplomatic protocols first, and maybe contact some authorities who are better equipped to handle this situation." She moved to my living room window, her movements making her appear to float rather than walk. "Your species has such fascinating social hierarchies. On my world, knowledge is freely shared among all. The concept of authorities who manage information is quite foreign to us." She paused, watching as more people gathered outside. "Though I must admit, your method of organizing society has produced some unexpected advantages. Your technological progress, while chaotic, has been remarkably rapid." The knocking at my door became more insistent. I could hear multiple voices now, including what sounded like local law enforcement. The alien seemed completely unfazed by the growing commotion, instead focusing her attention on a potted fern in my living room. "This primitive photosynthetic life form," she remarked, gently touching a leaf, "it serves no apparent purpose in your dwelling, yet you maintain it. Is this related to your binary reproductive system as well? I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Here I was about to become the center of humanity's first official alien contact, and my visitor was more interested in my houseplants and the mystery of human gender than in the growing chaos outside. Look, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I promised to explain everything about human biology, gender, and even my houseplants. But right now, we need to figure out how to handle this situation before it gets completely out of control. She turned those mesmerizing silver eyes toward me, and I felt a wave of calm wash over my mind. You're concerned about the impact of my presence on your society. How thoughtful. My species has protocols for such situations, though I must admit I'd never had to use them. Usually, I observe from a distance, but something about you. She paused, those alien eyes studying me intently. You didn't run. You stayed to satisfy your curiosity, just as I did. Perhaps that's why this interaction has progressed differently than my previous studies. The sound of sirens in the distance added urgency to our situation. The alien spacecraft was still hovering above my house, casting that ethereal blue light that made my backyard look like a scene from a sci-fi movie. Through the windows, I could see camera flashes from the growing crowd, and I knew that within minutes, social media would be exploding with images of my house and the mysterious craft above it. What had started as a simple question about human anatomy was about to become a global incident, and somehow I had become the impromptu ambassador for humanity. As I stood there in my living room, watching the alien examine my fern with scientific curiosity while chaos erupted outside, I couldn't help but wonder if this was exactly what she had planned all along. The wail of sirens grew closer as blue and red lights began dancing across my living room walls. The alien observed the light show with genuine fascination, her silvery skin reflecting the colors like a living disco ball. Your emergency response protocols are quite impressive, she commented, though I don't understand why they use such attention-drawing signals. On my world, emergencies are handled with absolute discretion. A loud voice boomed through a megaphone outside. This is the police. We have the house surrounded. Please exit the building with your hands where we can see them. The crowd had grown significantly, and I could hear the distinctive pop-pop of helicopter blades approaching. Well, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, this is definitely not how I planned to spend my evening. I glanced at my phone, which was now buzzing constantly with notifications. Various news outlets were already sharing grainy photos of the spacecraft, and #AlienVisitor was trending. The alien moved away from my fern and approached my cluttered desk, picking up a framed photo. It showed me with my students at last year's science fair, all of us grinning proudly next to a project about ecosystem diversity. You educate younger humans, she observed. This explains your measured response to my presence. You're accustomed to answering unusual questions. Before I could respond, my phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown, but somehow I knew this wasn't just another news outlet trying to reach me. I answered, and a deep, authoritative voice spoke. This is Director Chen from the Global First Contact Response Unit. We've been preparing for this possibility for decades. Is the entity still with you? I looked at the alien, who was now examining my collection of science magazines with intense interest. Yes, I replied, and she's mainly interested in human biology and my houseplants. There was a long pause on the other end. Biology? Plants? Director Chen sounded confused. Not our military capabilities, our technology, our resources. Actually, I said she seems most puzzled by human gender and reproduction. It's been an interesting conversation. The alien looked up from a magazine, her silver eyes glowing brighter. Are you communicating with your authorities? Excellent. Perhaps they can help explain why humans have such varied clothing protocols for different anatomical configurations. The correlation between genetic expression and fabric coverage is particularly puzzling. I heard Director Chen inhale sharply over the phone. Put me on speaker, she commanded. I did as asked, and her voice filled the room. Unknown entity. I am Director Chen of Earth's First Contact Protocol Division. We request a formal diplomatic meeting to establish. Oh, how delightful. The alien interrupted. Tell me, Director Chen, why do humans insist on covering their reproductive anatomical variations in public settings? Is it related to temperature regulation, or does it serve a social function? The data from my observations has been inconclusive. There was another long pause. I could almost hear Director Chen's brain trying to process this situation. Finally, she spoke again, her tone notably less formal. Are you telling me that an advanced alien civilization made first contact because they're confused about why we wear pants? Not exactly, the alien replied cheerfully. We're confused about many aspects of human biology and social customs. The clothing is just one fascinating element. For instance, why do you have designated rooms for waste elimination? And why are these rooms often separated based on anatomical variations? The efficiency of combining these functions into shared spaces would be… Okay, I interrupted, feeling my face grow hot. Maybe we should focus on the immediate situation, like the police outside and the news helicopters, and the fact that this is probably the most significant moment in human history. The alien tilted her head thoughtfully. Most significant, but I haven't even begun my detailed anatomical survey yet. Though I must say, your species' reaction to my presence is proving to be far more informative than I anticipated. The variety of emotional responses displayed by the gathering crowd is remarkable. Through the windows, I could see military vehicles arriving now, joining the police cars and news vans. My quiet suburban street had transformed into what looked like a scene from E.T., minus the hazmat suits, though I suspected those might be on their way. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from my school principal. Just saw your house on the news. I assume you'll need a substitute teacher tomorrow. The alien peeked over my shoulder at the message. Ah, your educational institution. Perhaps we could conduct my research there? A controlled environment with multiple subjects would be ideal for studying human anatomical variations and social behaviors. Absolutely not. Both Director Chen and I shouted simultaneously. Fascinating synchronization, the alien noted. Your species shows remarkable coordination in moments of stress. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the chaos outside. A deep, resonating hum that made my windows vibrate. The alien's eyes widened, the silver light pulsing rapidly. Oh dear, she said, and for the first time, I detected worry in her mental voice. It seems my research supervisor has noticed my unauthorized direct contact. Your unauthorized what? I asked, a new wave of anxiety washing over me. Well, she said, managing to look both sheepish and alien at the same time, I may have deviated slightly from standard observation protocols. We're not actually supposed to initiate direct contact until a species has achieved unified global governance and mastered clean fusion energy. She paused, looking around at the growing chaos outside, though I must say your species' response to my presence has provided far more valuable data than our usual passive observation methods. The humming grew louder, and through my living room window, we could see a second, much larger spacecraft materializing above the first one. This one wasn't trying to be subtle. It was easily the size of a football field and seemed to be made of shifting geometric patterns that hurt my eyes if I looked at them too long. Protocol breach detected. A new voice boomed in my head, this one far more authoritative and distinctly less friendly than my alien visitors. Unauthorized first contact initiated. Research permit status revoked. Preparing for immediate extraction and memory adjustment of all witnesses. My alien visitor turned to me, her silver eyes swirling with what looked like genuine concern. I apologize for what's about to happen, she said quickly. But I want you to know that this has been the most fascinating research expedition of my career. Your species is truly remarkable, especially your inexplicable attachment to gendered bathroom facilities. Before I could process what was happening, the larger spacecraft began emitting a brilliant purple light that bathed the entire neighborhood in its glow. Outside, the crowd of onlookers, police, and military personnel all froze in place, as if someone had hit a universal pause button. Wait, I called out, fighting against a strange heaviness that was trying to settle over my mind. You can't just leave. We haven't even answered your original question. The room was starting to spin, and I could feel my memories of the evening beginning to blur around the edges. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was my alien visitor quickly typing something into a device on her wrist, her final words echoing in my mind. "Don't worry. I left a backup copy of your memories in your houseplant. For research purposes, of course." The purple light faded, and I expected to find myself waking up in bed, dismissing the whole evening as a bizarre dream. Instead, I was still standing in my living room, completely aware of everything that had happened. The crowds outside had vanished, along with all the emergency vehicles and news helicopters. My street looked eerily normal, as if the past few hours had never happened. But something was different. My potted fern was glowing with a faint silver shimmer, barely noticeable unless you knew to look for it. As I approached the plant, a soft humming emanated from its leaves, reminiscent of the alien's voice. I reached out to touch it, and suddenly my mind was flooded with information, not just my memories of the evening, but something far more significant. Data transfer complete. A familiar voice echoed in my head. Secondary protocol initiated. It was my alien visitor, but this time her voice seemed to be coming from the fern. "I apologize for the deception, but you presented an unexpected opportunity. You see, I'm not exactly a xenobiologist, at least, not in the way I led everyone to believe." I sank into my armchair, staring at the gently glowing plant. "What do you mean?" "I'm part of a resistance movement within my species," the voice explained. "We believe our policy of non-interference with developing civilizations is fundamentally flawed. The questions about human anatomy were, well, let's call them a cover story. My real mission was to establish contact with a human who showed potential for understanding." The fern's glow pulsed in rhythm with her words, casting dancing shadows on my walls. "Understanding what?" I asked, though part of me already knew this was going to completely upend my life. "Understanding that humanity isn't alone in questioning the status quo, your species' remarkable ability to adapt, to challenge established norms, to question everything. These are traits that many advanced civilizations have lost. We've become stagnant, bound by protocols and regulations that prevent genuine connection and growth." Outside, a car drove past my house, its headlights briefly illuminating the room. Everything looked so normal, yet nothing would ever be normal again. But why me? Why a high school biology teacher? The fern rustled without any breeze. "Because you teach others to question, to observe, to understand. And more importantly, when faced with the unknown, you didn't run. You didn't attack. You tried to understand." Suddenly, my TV turned on by itself, showing what looked like a news broadcast. But something was off. The timestamp in the corner showed tomorrow's date. "What you're seeing," the alien's voice explained, "is what would have happened if my supervisor had succeeded in implementing the standard protocol." The broadcast showed experts debating whether the mass hallucination reported by hundreds of people in my neighborhood was caused by gas leaks, mass hysteria, or solar flare activity. Scientists were dismissed as attention-seeking when they tried to present evidence of unusual energy readings. The whole incident was being neatly wrapped up and explained away. "This is what happens every time," the voice continued. "Humanity gets close to discovering the truth, and it's hidden away, dismissed, forgotten, but not this time. This time, we left you proof." My phone buzzed, making me jump. It was a text from an unknown number, but the message made my heart race. "Check your recent cloud uploads." With trembling fingers, I opened my cloud storage app. There, uploaded just minutes ago, was a folder titled First Contact Protocols, Evidence for Humanity. It contained hundreds of files, documents about other civilizations, star maps, technological blueprints, and most surprisingly, a comprehensive guide titled Understanding Galactic Civilizations, a guide for Earth educators. "The Resistance believes it's time for humanity to join the larger galactic community," the voice explained, "but not through official channels. Those are too corrupted by bureaucracy and fear. Instead, we believe education is the key, teaching people to question, to wonder, to look up at the stars and know they're not alone." I opened the educator's guide, and my eyes widened at the first chapter title, Common Misconceptions About Human Biology, a Case Study in Cross-Species Communication. Despite everything, I couldn't help but laugh. So the questions about human anatomy weren't completely a cover story. Well, the voice seemed almost embarrassed. That part was genuine curiosity. My species really does reproduce by cellular division, and your binary system is genuinely fascinating to us. But it also made for an excellent distraction from my true mission. A new sound filled the room, a high-pitched whine that made my teeth ache. The fern's glow intensified. They're scanning for residual evidence. The voice explained hurriedly. I don't have much time. The files I've uploaded contain everything you need to know, including how to contact others like you, humans who have been chosen by different resistance members. You're not alone. But what am I supposed to do with all this? I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility being thrust upon me. Teach, the voice said simply. That's what you do best. Start small, maybe with a new unit on theoretical xenobiology in your classes. The guide includes suggestions for introducing these concepts gradually, in ways that won't attract too much attention, and when the time is right, you'll know how to find others who are ready to learn the truth. The whining sound grew louder, and the fern's glow began to fade. One last thing, the voice said, growing fainter. About your original question regarding human anatomical variations, we actually do understand them quite well. The confusion was part of our cover story, though I must admit your species' preoccupation with gendered clothing norms is genuinely perplexing. Perhaps you could include that in your lessons about cultural relativism across galactic civilizations. The whining sound reached a crescendo, and suddenly my fern stopped glowing entirely. The room plunged into silence, but my mind was racing with the implications of everything I'd just learned. I sat there in the darkness, my phone clutched in my hand, staring at the folder that contained proof of everything humanity had ever wondered about the universe. Just as I was about to open the first document, my phone screen flickered and displayed an incoming call from my own number. With shaking hands, I answered it. I hope you realize, said a familiar voice, that teaching humanity about the universe isn't just about sharing knowledge. It's about preparing them for what's coming. It was my alien visitor again, but this time her voice carried a weight of urgency I hadn't heard before. What do you mean, what's coming? I asked, glancing nervously at my now ordinary-looking fern. My supervisor isn't the only one scanning your planet right now. The Resistance, we're not just fighting against bureaucracy. We're racing against time. She paused, and I could hear something that sounded like distant alarms in the background. There are other species out there, ones who don't share our belief in gradual introduction. They want to make their own first contact, but their methods are less diplomatic. I walked to my window, looking up at the night sky with new eyes. How long do we have? That's the problem with teaching, she replied, a hint of her earlier humor returning. Sometimes your students learn faster than you expect. Some humans have already found parts of the truth on their own. Check your email. Subject line: Interesting observations from your Tuesday morning class. I opened my email, finding a message from one of my quieter students. Attached was a photo taken through our classroom telescope during last week's astronomy unit. In the background of what should have been a simple shot of Jupiter was a distinctive geometric shape, one that looked remarkably similar to the supervisor's ship. Your student has quite an eye for detail, the alien commented. She's not the only one. All across your planet, humans are starting to notice things they were trained to ignore. That's why the Resistance chose teachers as our primary contacts. You already know how to help people see what's been right in front of them all along. My computer suddenly turned on by itself, the screen displaying a star map unlike anything I'd ever seen. Points of light began connecting themselves, forming a complex network of lines and intersections. These are the safe routes, my visitor explained. The paths between stars that the others haven't found yet. Humanity will need them sooner than anyone expected. But I'm just a biology teacher, I protested. How am I supposed to prepare humanity for whatever this is? She laughed, the sound making my phone speakers crackle. Just a biology teacher. You showed more courage and curiosity in our brief encounter than many species do in centuries of official contact. Besides, remember how this all started, with a simple question about human anatomy. I couldn't help but smile. You really had me going with that act. Who says it was entirely an act? Understanding biological diversity is crucial for what's coming. Your species' adaptability, your endless variations, your ability to accept and celebrate differences. These aren't just admirable traits, they're survival skills. Suddenly, every electronic device in my house began to pulse with a soft blue light, the same color as her original ship. "The supervisor's final sweep is coming," she said quickly. "After this, any obvious evidence of our encounter will be erased, but they can't erase what they can't recognize." I looked at my fern, then at my phone, and finally at the star map still glowing on my computer screen. "And what can't they recognize?" "A biology lesson," she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Starting tomorrow, you'll notice some interesting additions to your teaching materials. Whenever you open your lesson planning software, you'll find subtle suggestions for expanding your curriculum. Nothing obvious, just little thoughts about how different species might evolve, how life could adapt to other environments, how biology and culture intersect across the cosmos." The blue light grew brighter. "One last thing," she added, "that question about what's between human legs. The answer is more important than you realize. Your species' physical diversity, your endless capacity for variation and adaptation. It's not just biology. It's proof that you're ready for what's out there, even if out there isn't quite ready for you." The light reached its peak intensity, and I instinctively closed my eyes. When I opened them again, everything in my house had returned to normal. My phone showed no record of the last call, my computer was off, and my fern looked exactly like it had that morning. But when I opened my laptop to review tomorrow's lesson plans, I noticed something new. Tucked between my usual units on cellular structure and evolutionary theory was a folder I'd never seen before, labeled simply, Comparative Xenobiology, a Theoretical Approach. I clicked it open and smiled at the first line. Before we can understand other species, we must first understand ourselves. Begin with the obvious question, what makes us human? As I settled in to review the material, my phone buzzed one last time. The message was simple. "Class begins tomorrow. The universe is ready to learn." Looking up at the night sky through my window, I couldn't help but wonder how many other teachers around the world were receiving similar messages tonight. How many other ferns were glowing softly in quiet rooms. How many other lessons were being quietly modified to prepare humanity for its greatest test. And somewhere out there, I was sure a curious alien xenobiologist was preparing her own report, titled Human Education Systems, the Perfect Cover for Galactic Revolution. The next morning, I walked into my classroom earlier than usual. Everything looked normal. The same educational posters on the walls, the same scattered chairs my students never pushed in properly, the same worn wooden desk I'd used for years. But now I knew each ordinary object might hold extraordinary secrets. I powered up my computer and opened the day's lesson plan. There, nestled between cellular mitosis and genetic variation, was a perfectly ordinary-looking unit titled Theoretical Adaptations in Diverse Environments. Any administrator glancing at it would see standard biology curriculum, but I knew better. My first class filed in, their usual morning chatter filling the room. As they settled into their seats, I noticed my quiet student, the one who'd captured that interesting photo of Jupiter, studying the fern on my windowsill with unusual intensity. When she caught my eye, she gave me a knowing smile that made me wonder just how many other people had been chosen as cosmic educators. "Okay, class," I began, writing on the board with newfound purpose. "Today we're going to talk about adaptation, about how life finds ways to survive and thrive in even the most unexpected conditions." I paused, looking at their faces, these young humans who might be humanity's first generation to knowingly reach for the stars. But first, I have a question for you all to consider. What makes us human? A few hands shot up, but it was what I heard in the hallway that made me smile. The soft, almost musical hum of what might have been the ventilation system, or might have been something else entirely. After all, the best teachers never work alone. Later that evening, as I sat grading papers, I discovered that my students' essays on biological adaptation contained insights that seemed far beyond their years. One wrote about theoretical life forms that might communicate through bioluminescence. Another discussed the potential advantages of cellular division over binary reproduction. In the margins of one paper, I swear I saw a few words written in silvery ink that shifted and changed when I tried to read them. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. First day's review. Excellent progress. Humanity's capacity for understanding continues to exceed expectations. Keep watching the stars. They're watching too. I looked out my classroom window at the darkening sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere up there, a curious alien scientist was probably filing her report about Earth's educational systems. And maybe, just maybe, she was still wondering about what humans keep between their legs, though now I suspect she knows it's not just about biology. It's about humanity's endless capacity to question, to adapt, to grow. And as for that glowing fern in my classroom, well, let's just say some questions are better left for future lessons. After all, every good teacher knows that the best way to keep students engaged is to maintain a little mystery. The universe, it turns out, is the ultimate classroom, and class is definitely in session.